You're listening to CreepGeeks Podcast. So it begins again. Welcome back to the CreepGeeks Podcast, Season 6, Episode 250.
Is it CERN? Heatwave equals more paranormal, the doorway effect, and Bigfoot fraud.
Yeah. So here we are again. Welcome back to the CreepGeeks Podcast. I'm Greg.
I'm Omi.
And this podcast is about what?
It's about,
So the CreepGeeks Podcast, which is the paranormal weird news podcast, we broadcast paranormal news and share our strange experiences from our underground bunker in the mountains of western North Cackalack. That's
Yes.
Carolina, in case you were wondering. So anyway, welcome. Glad to have you here. And if you could hold all your questions and applause to the end, that'd be great.
And while you're at it, if you could also please vote for us on Paranormality's favorite podcast of the month contest. We've provided a link in the show notes for you guys to go ahead and give us a vote.
Yeah. That'd be very nice.
Yeah.
And do you know what we get for winning? I don't know. Nothing.
The appreciation
picture
of others.
Yeah. I don't know. And we've been in the top 10 a couple times.
Yeah.
You know, so, and people who vote, I very much appreciate it. And you know who you are.
Yes.
So, okay. Anyway, before we move into the podcast, let's just say there's been a couple weird things that have been sort of going on here recently, right? Mm-hmm. And with that being said, we're going to talk about some of those weird things, but it's just weird in a weird way. And I don't know if it's weird in a weird way because I'm just not paying attention, or I'm already burnt out on the paranormal, or it's CERN.
I would say
CERN.
Some of the weird stuff that's been going on lately, I think it's a combination of being burnt out and the very clever tactic of wait and see.
Yeah.
Yes. So let's see how this unfolds.
Yeah.
Oh, look.
Dun, dun, dun. Oh, but wait.
It unfolded just as we expected it would.
Yeah.
Oh, look, this thing we've been saying for 2 years.
Is what it is now.
Yeah.
Shocking. Okay. So, all right. Now, as we do, because somebody asked us a long time ago, what are you going to have for dinner after the podcast? And I don't know if it's going to be steak stir fry or something else.
It's going to be steak stir fry as long as I make rice or noodles. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, noodles would be nice.
If I can. I don't know if we have any.
Yes, we do.
Okay. All right, then.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we do.
Yeah.
All right, so we have a 14 term of the day that we like to talk about, kind of put out these different terms and stuff so that you may have a better understanding of what we're trying to say. And this is apocryphal.
Yes.
And I didn't put a definition because I forgot, so I don't know what it is.
I'll let you know what it is.
All right.
Because I have an expanded definition of it.
Okay, hold on. All right, I'm ready.
So, apocryphal is actually commonly misdefined. The actual definition of it is of doubtful or dubious authenticity, although widely circulated as being true. Now, it does come from the word apocrypha, which, usually means, or relates to, I should say, like myth or folklore or commonly accepted yet still strange. So that's what apocrypha usually defines as.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Whereas apocryphal, truly indicates that dubious or doubtful authenticity. Apocrypha is, well, we know it's really weird, but we're going to go ahead and accept it.
With no real proof.
Pretty much, other than the proof that hundreds of other people over hundreds of years have usually believed it. Such as occult books and stuff like that. Usually people will accept them for face value. So,
as does everybody on the internet. I read it on the internet. It must be true.
I've read it.
There's no real background. You got a whole bunch of whatever, so it's all apocryphal on the internet.
I read it in a Facebook group. It has
or even better, Reddit. Well, according to the experts on Reddit, which is everybody who has a Reddit account, you're doing it completely wrong. It'll never work. And it doesn't matter that you've been doing it for 5 years that way.
I really like how Reddit equals bachelor's degree or like 20 years life experience. Yeah.
Yeah. So, everybody's got it. And that's the thing about Reddit, you know. And I've taken to reading a lot of Reddit. Even more so. I've been on Reddit for like 10, 15 years or something like that. A long time, right?
Yeah.
And I just would glance at topics and stuff and then kind of move on because, you know, it becomes real quick. There's always a little bit of a good advice for different things, especially depending on the subreddit you're in, right? Which is like, you know. And then you just come across just the stupid. Just like, come on, man. And one of the subtopics that we haven't really talked too much about in the paranormal stuff is Skinwalker Ranch in the show.
Yeah.
We've made mention to it, we haven't really talked about it. Well, Reddit has a Skinwalker Ranch subreddit, R Skinwalker. I think it's R Skinwalker Ranch, but
yeah.
And in that show, you have people that are just incensed that these guys aren't doing these like laboratory experiments on everything that they do. And I'm not, clearly you guys have never done anything like what they're trying to do ever. You know, and they go out there and they shoot rockets and they're trying to measure different radiation levels and EM spectrums and radio and all this stuff. They're trying to measure it as best they can, right? And they're not a government lab, these guys. And one of the guys is pretty famous because he's been outed as being involved in UAPs and all that junk. But anyway, in the Reddit thread, there'll be these people that are like, you know, you didn't do it like a scientist with a lab coat out in the freaking desert. You didn't move like 1 million tons of rubble to go look in a cave. And it's like, I'm thinking to myself, you have clearly never been to the desert and stood on a boulder. It's kind of small. That weighs about 2 tons.
Yeah.
And you're just going to get out there with a bulldozer and move all of these boulders from what looks like an exploded cave out of the, how would you even attempt to do something
I found a piece of petrified wood, like a petrified log, that was like waist high on me, meaning it was like as wide as me and waist tall.
Yeah.
And it would take like a super fancy, like very high end 4-wheel drive truck with a hitch or with a, what do you
So
call
you
it
don't
thing?
know either. It would take more than that.
Forever.
You would have to have like a,
because
like,
just how dense some of the minerals
you'd have to
are
have
out
some
there.
heavy equipment to move that 800 to 1,000 pound stump.
Closer to 1,000, especially when you get closer like Arizona and Utah, you know?
Well, it depends on,
So-
I mean, anyway, it doesn't matter. There's so many factors, but none of these people are, and they're just so disparaging about the work that they're doing because they're not doing it in a way that a Reddit armchair scientist, you know, would do. And you run into that a lot, and you run into it with, like, you know, the paranormal side of things where you have like different paranormal subreddits and stuff and Bigfoot, and then you have people that post pictures of everything and go, look, what do you see in my refrigerator? That's the devil in a jar of pickles kind of thing. And I just seen that, and I'm like, what?
So remember a few years ago when people started harping on others, especially in the Bigfoot community, about keyboard researchers?
Yeah.
Well, it kind of died down.
Keyboard warriors.
Yeah. Well, even like keyboard warriors was like general culture. Keyboard researchers was like the ghost hunting and Bigfoot communities.
Yeah.
It seemed to die down, especially with 2020 and everybody being stuck at home. And now it's just like commonly accepted, especially on Reddit, which is why I'm not on Reddit as much, is because you're giving a platform for this person to just make their general observation.
Well, yeah, which is the internet in general,
Yeah.
but it just seems like it's worse on Reddit.
Yeah.
And, you know, you'll post something amazing, and the very first thing that every Redditor in that subthread will do, mostly, is just blast you. Is just basically dump crap right all over you, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you're getting jumped in to Reddit, right? It's like, oh, let me get jumped into the paranormal research thread or subreddit. Let me get jumped into the Skinwalker thing,
Yeah.
you know?
But it's,
And then, you know, and one thing that you'll never see or read on the Reddit subthreads is, oh, yeah? Well, show me what you've done, because none of them can really back it up or show
Which
anything that they've done.
goes along with that keyboard researcher. You
Yeah.
know?
So anyway, I kind of come across a CERN sort of thing, and, you know, CERN is the Large Hadron or Hadron. Here's the deal. When it comes to really spending days, weeks, months researching something like CERN and trying to get into the, you know, I'm not doing it. I like to stay surface level with a lot of things like that. You know, take a helicopter view of things. Mm-hmm. Because when you get these rabbit holes and they're just so deep, it's just like, I have better things. I have enough stuff to worry about. Like this giant meteor, it's like the size of a Manhattan skyscraper whizzing past the U.S. on Sunday. Which, if you're listening to this on Monday, congratulations. Right? There's things that you want to go into and dive into, do a little bit of a deeper dive, and there's things that you remain sort of a helicopter view. And the idea that CERN and this Hadron Collider, this large, can fire up and is trying to smash particles together, and it may or may not be changing our reality because it fired up for a couple of years. Things got weird, right? And the whole Mandela effect really started to become a lot more prominent, and then it turned itself off for a couple of years so they could make it bigger, faster, stronger. And it's on again.
I think remaining at the helicopter view is important because the leap for those two for me is very hard because I do not have a full understanding.
Neither do I, and that's why we're just going to gloss over this.
It does.
Yeah.
But I'm sitting here with everybody on TikTok and Reddit and all these other places going, it's going to do this. And I'm like, how? How can you explain how it's going to do that? That's
not their jobs. You should know that. You make a statement on the internet, it is not your job to back it up. It's not.
But I almost feel like, and we'll talk about this soon, like with the Bigfoot hoax and the Georgia Guidestones news, I do feel it is my missive to, like, debunk certain things or have them explain more thoroughly. Because if I know for a fact that's not how that works, I feel that should be given.
Don't be one of the Redditors that I'm talking about.
Equal platform, you know? I mean, I spent, like, gosh, a good part of the middle of last week going, no, they did not do this. No, they did not do that with the Georgia Guidestones because we've been there. We've been there multiple times.
Yeah.
You know? So to see all this, like, these crazy statements being made.
Well, let's go back to CERN. Who cares about Georgia Guidestones? We're going to have to care about Georgia Guidestones in like 17 minutes.
Okay.
So let's not get off tangent here.
I know.
That's just what the Nelson Mandela effect wants you to do. It's all because of CERN. It doesn't matter how. How do you explain anything? And see, and this is part of the problem, right? And, you know, I believe that there are explanations for everything. Mm-hmm. But how do you prove something you can't even articulate or wrap your head around to begin with? It's like quantum physics. How do you wrap your head around that? And there's going to be some people, you know, that can probably explain it better, of course. But at the end of the day, we're not expert. Mm-hmm. And neither are they. You know, you're only an expert until somebody proves you wrong when it comes to like papers and theories and things like that. When you write a theory or a thermal or a paper on something, right, and nobody can disprove it, well, then you must be correct until you can be disproven or otherwise, right, or until it's like a widely held sort of thing. And then even then, when you disprove, when you're the person who does the disproving, then you're the bad guy. And then you have to fight to the death over how you come to the conclusion that everybody else is just given up on trying to find. Right?
Okay.
And so if we look at like parallel universes in general, you know, how can we prove that they exist or don't exist?
Yeah. How?
Exactly. How? How can you prove it? Until somebody goes and comes back and brings back some kind of tangible proof. It's all theorems and basically hocus pocus until somebody says, yes, and here it is. Here's the deal. I've proven it. But the idea that parallel universe changes because of some sort of outside influence or some sort of thing and monkeying around with how things work that we don't yet understand. Hold on. Right. And then changing these things. And then you have a bunch of people that are turning around going, wait a minute, this is not how I remember it. And I remember this. So are all these people crazy and have some sort of mass psychosis, or is something fundamentally changed or different that you can't explain why or how it's changed or different?
Maybe I do not have a full grasp on the theorems and general overview on how this Hadron Collider works.
Well, nobody does, except for the people that work there.
But
and even
to automatically associate it with that, why can't we associate it with, let's go back 30 years ago with, the end times are here. So they automatically associated, you know, all these crazy things happening 30 years ago with all these apocryphal texts saying that the end of the world was coming.
Well, that's happened since the beginning of time.
So we're going to
There's always an end.
We're going to attach all these weird incidences to this thing that barely a minority of people understand, which is the Hadron Collider. That's where I have the problem.
Okay, I don't understand what you're saying. So, are you saying because you don't get it, you don't believe?
I'm saying because a large portion of people do not understand how this thing works. It's basically witchcraft. So let's go ahead and associate all the weirdness happening to it.
Okay. Well, either way, you got to admit something's been going on.
It is weird.
I mean, you can't, and that's the thing, right? It's like, how do you explain? You know, how do you explain ghosts? How do you explain angelic events or divinity type stuff or even Satan type stuff or even UFOs and UAPs? Because at the end of the day, you can't just definitively say Bigfoot exists. Here's the proof and make it irrefutable. Right? You can't. And that's the problem with all of this. There'll never be a solid, distinct answer on anything when it comes to it. Because once the understanding occurs, there's something that happens that will eventually change the way you look at it and the way the evidence put out there, or the way that the fact is. Like when it becomes obvious that Bigfoot is a thing and you have facts to prove it, you know what changes those facts?
What?
Time. So you look back 30 years, like when Bigfoot was a thing, 30 years passed, and you're like, well, that wasn't just Bigfoot. There's different subsets of Bigfoot. There's different tribes, if you will. They have different language, and then see, everything is sort of muddied by time. Because time equals more understanding, typically.
Okay. Or elaborating of folklore.
Like a long time ago when the idea that things can be manipulated using frequency and sound. And people like you were out of your mind. And now they're like, no, it's absolutely true. Harmonics do affect things. Frequency and cycles and energy cycles do have an effect, and they do exist. Look at quartz crystal. That thing still resonates at a certain frequency all the time. They didn't know that until they figured out how to actually measure quartz crystals. So when it comes to these parallel universes and stuff, and the Mandela effect and CERN and all that sort of thing, it seems like here, recently, with this thing fired back up in the beginning of July, that things are either righting themselves or changing in a way that generally the people that have noticed it or even thinking about it say, I feel a lot more positive about what's going on than I did before. Like it got fired up before and things went to hell in a handbasket for a couple of years. And we're just impossibly coming out of it. Now, all of a sudden, they fire this up again in the beginning of July, and a lot of people are starting to say things are becoming more right. Like, for example, there was a TikToker who was like, I don't know what it is, man, but, you know, a couple of years ago, the sky looked a certain way.
I'll agree about that.
And then, you know, after this in July, it looks like I remember it. Like they were saying that the sky and the things that they've seen in the sky and the colors and all of that sort of thing had a distinctly different look than they remember it. And the dude was like, I used to love looking at the sky, and I've noticed it is completely different. And then he said, after they fired up the CERN, right, let's just call it, because, you know, we're not qualified to actually call it what it really is, right? Yeah. Things have changed. Things look different. It looks the way I remember it.
I wouldn't say that, but I will acknowledge.
No, that's what he said. It doesn't matter what you say.
Like, the skies over, what was it, South Dakota or North Dakota? And they took on that huge green, like, sickly, almost Stranger Things worthy green tone for, like...
I don't know.
Yeah, it was crazy. It made it on, like, some of the weather websites and stuff like that. But it was like... You literally thought Stranger Things was just going to drop out of the sky, like that whole universe, because that's how green everything got.
Well,
and I mean, well, you're saying that there are a lot of people who are looking at it as the universe writing themselves. I just think it's just, there's been a lot of weird stuff lately.
There has, but what if the weird stuff was actually created and caused? I mean, there's theories that go back to say, okay, first off, the Mayan calendar that we used to predict the end of the world that didn't occur was wrong. Mm-hmm. Because of tampering around with the Gregorian calendar and all that sort of thing. Actually kicked everything off by like 4 to 9 years or whatever it was. And when CERN fired up the first time, some years ago, that was the time that actually set the end of the world in motion, which just happened to coincide with the Mayan calendar, the correct Mayan calendar, if you believe in that kind of thing. Mm. And then it ran for a couple of years. Things got super crazy, and everybody started noticing all this weird stuff. Things were changing, and then they stopped it. And it sort of had this sort of coasted, sort of uncertain, like everything's just been uncertain for a couple of years. And you had other things popping up, like, of course, COVID and everything else. And now they fired it back up again. And there are a lot of people out there saying that things are feeling right. Now, if you look at it from sort of an existential sort of thing, you know, if you take all the little things that make things right for you, they would all have to become aligned to give you that feeling that things are going right. Well, nothing has really changed because things are still trash.
Yeah.
Gas is super high, inflation's bad, medical care sucks, everything is still bad. You know, there's still conflicts overseas, there's still COVID, there's even more variants. Why all of a sudden do people start feeling like things are better?
Now, that goes into psychology.
Well, does it though? Well, what causes that? See, what causes that feeling you get? See, you can always explain this
like
with anything that you want. Psychology, right? This
almost like the 7 stages of grief or aging and maturity.
Are you saying that people are just giving up and that's why they feel better?
Acceptance can be equal elation sometimes.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. The world has been shit for a number of years. It's still shit. Now, why all of a sudden do things just sort of feel okay? If nothing has changed and everything is the same, and for the most part people are aware of the problem, why would they just magically start to go,
I don't have that.
Things are different. Well, you don't, but that's just it. Not everybody does. I remember Berenstain versus Berenstain.
Yeah.
I remember that. I had both those books. Mm-hmm. I remember those certain things. I remember Shaq making that shitty movie. I'm sorry, Sinbad making the Shazam movie. I remember certain things. I remember Curious George having a tail. I remember all this stuff because I had it. And the hat.
Yeah.
His original hat was supposed to be red.
Paddington Bear. Yeah.
Right. I remember these things. And it's not that, over time your memory got to the point where you don't remember them. It's like, I can see the memory clouding the issue when it's your own personal memory as you're relating it to someone else. But there are certain memories that most people just don't ever talk about. Like, nobody's ever really talked about Curious George having a tail until somebody else talked about it. Like, wait a minute.
Mine is weird.
See, so if he doesn't have a tail, then the type of monkey that he was changed. Right?
Yeah.
So what kind of monkey was he? He wasn't a chimpanzee.
Yeah. See, mine is Hello Kitty 1972, not 1974. And everybody fights me on that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no.
I mean, I wouldn't know. See, I would be one of these people that have no idea. I would just have to either you'd win me over in an argument or I wouldn't care enough to really put into it. And that's just the thing. But see, that's what you get. You have a lot of people that just as a whole are non-player entities, right? They're NPCs.
Yeah.
They do their own thing. They don't care. They don't think about it. And we've met people like that. They're like, I will live in this town till the day I die. I've never gone anywhere. I have no inclination to do anything else, go anywhere else, or do anything but this. And I'm completely happy to do just this. And to me, I'm like, you are insane. Why would you not want to go to another place? Why would you not want to have another experience? How can this be it?
Yeah. Well,
you see what I'm saying? But that's the problem. There's too many variables with the entire thing. And that's the thing with CERN. What if something like firing this thing up makes such a small change over everything that impacts you, every little infinitesimal event, that some of those things, if we call them zeros and ones like binary, right? Some of those things that were turned off are now turned back on again, and it shifts that sort of balance. And you can't just put your finger on the one thing because it's billions of things. And the easy way to describe all of this is just call it a simulation. And then, it's controlled by somebody else, because then that takes the responsibility of trying to figure out how everything is supposed to occur. Right? You have no control over it. That's what the simulation basically says. You have no control over shit happens. And that's an easy way for you to deal with stuff, especially if you're like, whatever.
I don't know. I'm getting frustrated because it's like, all right, my understanding of how the Hadron Collider works and what it does and how that translates into the effect of what it does turns into butterfly effect, turns into Mandela effect. That's where I'm having the biggest trouble grasping and accepting what other people are saying, the consequences of it.
Right.
So, like, I am having a hard time understanding how two light particles bashing into each other is causing all this chaos when in space, two light particles smash into each other all the time.
Yeah, and seeing that's part of the actual problem, because a lot of the collider and the magic that's occurring in the collider is showing us, there's more than just what we can actually see or what we've ever seen. So now there's more particles than just the two light particles. There's more pieces of an atom, right?
Yeah.
Then the electron, the proton, the neutron, and all those stuff. Then you got like quarks, little bits of string for string. You got all this stuff that we didn't even know existed. So we have scientists who don't know, because they've never been able to actually record or see exactly what some of these things are, because it has been possible for us now being able to see some of these things. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like, imagine drinking water all your life, and then somebody brings over to you a microscope and puts that one drop of water out of your water bottle on that slide, and you can see a billion little squigglies in there. To you, they did not exist. Now your entire world changes, and you're like, wow, I could die from dysentery, like they did going across the computer game to Oregon or wherever it was. You don't know until you know. I mean, what happens when we all find out that animals are sentient? Every one of them, a bug, a stick, and then it all has a thought process to it. And when you eat it, it knows, and it knows fear, and it knows pain, and it knows all that stuff. You see what I'm saying? It makes it hard to eat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, and this is part of it. I mean, they even have gone so far as to figure out that there is a possibility that time crystals exist.
You mean like in Marvel?
No, because it's not actually a crystal. They named it time crystal because it was a cool marketing gimmick, like Marvel, right? Or even like Star Trek, where the Klingons had time crystals on it. Anyway,
yeah.
It's something that occurs that actually sort of suspends the operation of one thing over another for a certain period of time, and there's no reason for it. It's like, whoa. And they're calling it a time crystal. So they're doing things they really don't know exactly what they're doing. And you have a public spokesman saying, this kind of thing happens in space all the time. Yeah, isn't that how the Big Bang started? You blew shit up by two something smashing together? And we're doing it in this, 5-mile loop in France? So, I mean, who's to say that this is happening this way or not? Because you can never prove that the collider firing up is causing, or CERN, is causing the sort of interdimensional parallel world shifts. But you can't prove that it isn't either. There just seems to be a lot of people are going, I think it's CERN. And, people, whenever they fire it up, you got people around the world that say, I don't understand. I can't sleep. I feel edgy. I feel all this. I feel all that. Like out of nowhere. And it's like this mass thing. And so you have some people that are maybe more sensitive to that kind of thing. Because this thing is putting out a ton of power. And we don't really know what we got. Everybody's like, trust the scientists. I'm surprised all the scientists don't have British accents to make us all feel better about it. Well, they must be legit. They have a British accent, right? For all intents and purposes, maybe the okie doke effect.
Which I'm more apt to fall for or believe. Because, I don't know. I'm just having a very hard time attributing all this to one scientific concept and testing that very few people have the opportunity to understand or comprehend. And it goes back to the way that some of these things are explained to us, because a majority of people are not, it's not that they're not smart, it's that they are limited in their comprehension of things, that we automatically attach it to, like we did hundreds of years ago, witchcraft. Luckily we're not burning these people at the stake, but we are sharing fake articles on Facebook. That's
no, I totally understand what you're saying, but at the same time, you can't prove that it's not. Nobody can.
So,
I mean, honestly, if you look at things at like face value of what they actually are, and you took away feelings and everything else to it, and you look at and you apply that to that sort of thinking about power. Mm-hmm. We have these rolling blackouts because of heat and everything else that's occurring because fossil fuels and everything else like that. Inflation is super high. Which, a lot of people are like, well, that's just how it is. I don't think so. It's orchestrated. I'll say that because it is. It is. There's no reason for it other than some promises that were made during an election cycle of I'm going to shut these things down, which is actually occurring. But let's look at power and power as a whole and the problem of power. And you look at nuclear power. Nuclear power is by far the safest form of power out there.
Yeah.
And people are like, you're crazy. It's nuclear. There's been less people killed. There's been less issues with, things like waste and leakages and stuff. And I know you have like Fukushima, which is a problem with the sea coming in. And you also have problems with like Chernobyl. You almost had a problem with 3 Mile Island.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if you put down the numbers and how things actually work, and if they're done the correct way and how they're supposed to be done, it is the safest form of power out there.
It's a safe form of power with the highest output.
Right. And it has less sort of manufacturing problems than, let's say, making solar panels, which is silica, and destroying things, and all the copper that's going to be necessary to make like all the wind power and solar and everything else to try and make all the cars electric and all that. It creates a problem of scale.
Yeah. Or the wastefulness of like
right. And I mean, look at if you take just a lithium alone it takes to make these batteries for some of these cars, or just lithium battery technology in general. It's when these things catch on fire, it's a special event. It's not just a regular fire.
Call a special department.
Yeah, and to the point of even having like a hazmat team show up. I mean, so it has some serious effects to it. I don't know, man. But the idea that, with some of the Mandela effect things occurring possibly because of CERN, and possible that, even the crazy wild theory that our universe, our reality was destroyed when CERN fired up and we took the place of another one, and that's why things are slightly different, is crazy. And since you're so aligned with your parallel universe as you, right? Like if you're universe 163 and the you in universe 162, if you become aligned, then you will have small subtle differences. And the whole idea of time and everything else and this sort of parallel multiple universes or multiverse or whatever has really sort of gotten a lot more popular because of shows like Loki, the Avengers movies and stuff like that. But I mean, it's not...
Most of the Marvel universe.
Well, yeah, but it's not new. It's not new at all. It's been a theory for a long time. They even have, they were even talking about trying to bring universes together or dimensions together. So there's a lot of weird stuff going on. And there's been articles where they're saying, hey, you don't actually dream. These are all theories, of course. You don't actually dream. You just, become aware of another parallel universe that you're in at that particular time. So you're living a snippet of the alternate universe you. And that's where your dream comes from. That's why they're always off, but a little bit familiar and everything else. So it's just nutty, man. And, it depends on how you look at it. But is everything that's going on because of CERN or not? Who knows? But for a short period after that thing fired up around the beginning of July, things did feel a little off for me.
With everything that people are equating to CERN and stuff like that, the one thing I was looking forward to, and I just tried to do an internet search and got limited results, sky sounds. Because we've talked about the changing color of the sky and all this other stuff, so now I'm really interested in if anybody's experiencing sky sounds. Because remember that stuff?
But they really haven't gone away. And to me, I'm kind of on the verge of sky sounds are nothing more than ambient noise that's being created at such a low frequency that it can actually travel great distances where you'll never be able to actually figure out where it's coming from.
Yeah.
And that's coming from a sonar standpoint where we would create, acoustic energy and then transmit it. And you couldn't even hear it until it actually...
Well, there's that...
it's a pretty...
There's that theory that, maybe there was like a Hadron Collider near Taos and stuff like that. Taos, New Mexico. And that's what part of the hum was. That was one theory, I should say. So...
Yeah, I would have to... I don't necessarily agree with that one, that theory with the hum. I thought it was more communication and electromagnetic energy.
So I tried to see if
anybody's... resonant hum.
Anybody's reporting a hum out in France, and I didn't see anything.
Yeah.
Saw some other interesting stuff, interesting fact. The loudest sound in recorded history was Krakatoa. I'm like, oh, that's cool.
How do they know that?
This article.
Yeah. And it's recorded history.
Yeah, that's true.
It's ever since we started paying attention to something.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, I don't know. And let me give you one more example of the Mandela effect. To me, I was like, whatever, that's not right. CP30. Or C3PO, I should say.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen he had a silver leg?
Yeah.
Just one random, the bottom part. And I'm like, I seen Star Wars in the theater. I was there, man. That dude did not have a silver leg.
Yeah, he did.
No, not in my time. He was all gold. He did not have a silver leg.
Yeah, he did.
You're saying that, okay, for you, he did. For me, he did not.
Because there were a couple of parts on him that were kind of borrowed. So
okay, but the borrowed parts didn't occur until after he got taken all apart, when he got disassembled. In the Star Wars movie, for me, that dude had gold legs.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's been a redo where they've redone the beginning movies, whatever, and people are like, those aren't technically the beginning, and I don't want to fight over whatever. I know when they came out, in order of when they appeared on the screen, that dude had gold legs. So... And I'm sure the Star Wars nerds are like, well, wait a minute. And it's like, I'm not going to fight with you, man. This is what I remember. And I know a lot of people remember it the same freaking way. Otherwise, it wouldn't be an example of the Mandela effect.
Yeah. Okay.
What? I mean, even in the books, because I even read the books for a while because they were easy reads. They weren't anyway. Moving on. It's CERN. CERN did it.
Okay.
So if we don't know what's going on with CERN and a large hadron collider, and if it's going to cause an intergalactic calamity or not, you have to rely on somebody to tell you if this stuff is real or not, right?
Yeah.
So what better place than to have Snopes, right? Snopes is supposed to be the one to tell you when things are real and not real, because they do investigations, right? So I put a couple links in there because everything we talk about in our show is in link form, and you can peruse those links at your leisure, and they're available on our website. If you go to CreepGeeks.com, you can look it up and research if you want.
Yeah.
So Snopes, and you go to Snopes.com, and the fact check is CERN portal to another dimension. Like, in other words, is CERN creating a portal to another dimension? It's a nice way of saying, with this intergalactic calamity, right? So according to fact checks under science, no, CERN did not open a portal to another dimension in July 2022.
Okay.
And this is by Bethania Palmer, I guess. I don't know if Palma? Yeah. I don't know if I'm saying her first name correct.
Bethania.
Whatever. Sounds
Palma.
great, right? And basically, she explains the acronym of the French language for CERN, right? Which is basically, in French, it's the European Organization for Nuclear Research. And then she talks about how it's been a target of fantastical conspiracy theories, right? And it should come to no surprise on July 5th, 2022, when scientists at CERN fired up a Large Hadron Collider. After 3 years of upgrades and maintenance work, some conspiracy theories would fire up too. And it's like, okay, I see what you're doing here. You're already in the first couple sentences of your article going to immediately basically shit on people with these theories. And that's fine. I kind of think I'm still a little old school when it comes to reading news articles and junk like that. As you should have a neutral tone. Put the information out there as best you can and let people decide instead of picking one. So basically they're saying it's false. Hey, this whole thing is false. No, that's not what it did. But if you read the actual article, there is absolutely nothing in here that says, no, they didn't do it. Because they can't say that they didn't do it because they can't prove that they didn't do it. So they basically tell you about how CERN works.
Yeah.
This is a non-article.
I'm getting a little tired with Snopes, though.
Me too, because, they just take the same sources that you can find on the internet and prove one way or the other that that's what they think.
Yeah.
And it's done by a person. And if you've ever had any kind of article or anything like that blasted off the internet by a fact checker, let's talk about Facebook, right? And you're like, hold on, this is from the CDC. How can you say this is crap? It's from the CDC.
Yeah.
So you maybe $20 an hour worker who has been basically as a subcontractor through these people say that my article is not true, even though it is true because it came from the Center for Disease Control. And you hit me for having a non-factual article, call my stuff fake news. It's like, how is it fake news, dude? It's from the freaking organization that sets the rules in the first place when it comes to this stuff.
They're going so far as basically you're not allowed to, or they're dissuading you from sharing an article unless you've opened the link in browser.
Oh, that's how they're trying to prove it. Oh, okay. Is that what they do at Snopes? Do they actually do that?
So, behind the scenes, when you're a subcontractor like that, you are not allowed to open the link in browser, depending on the contract. I'm not saying all of them. But if you are a fact checker or authenticator or anything like that, you have to use the developer end of the application to open the links, which often don't load right. So,
interesting.
Yeah, as a subcontractor that has experience with this, I don't understand how they're getting away. Well, Facebook particularly is getting away with dissuading you from sharing links that they don't think you have opened in browser.
Yeah.
Or in app, I should say.
And that's, and the sad thing is that Snopes used to be, I thought, pretty
good.
Genuous. Now it appears that, I don't know. So according to that article that I read, she does nothing to dissuade or basically prove to me that, no, they did not do it. Because her response or article of the text or whatever that she's put in response to the question doesn't talk at all about the actual question. So is it CERN? I have no idea. Is CERN a thing? Sure, it's obviously a thing. They're smashing stuff together.
Yeah.
And here's how and I've seen it where they say, well, hey, things smash in space all the time and there's no problems out there, like particles. That's out in space, man. Space is a pretty big place. The Earth's not so big.
No, it's not.
So, and anyway. So we're done talking about CERN. So what do you guys think? If you have any opinion on that, let us know. You can go to creepgeeks.com. We have a contact spot where you can just click it and fill it out. You can also call us if you want.
That phone number is going to be 575-208-4025.
Or you can interact with us on the Facebooks.
Yeah. Just search for Creep Geeks Podcast on Facebook. You'll find our group as well as our page where we make announcements as far as events, latest podcast episodes, and so much more. Now, we've also included in this podcast episode a couple of links we haven't exactly talked about.
Yeah.
Some of them are just a bit weird, like the Guardians of the Looking Glass.
Yeah, that's a rabbit hole. That's my gift to you.
Yeah,
I'm not talking about it. That's why I
just had to open
it.
3 links just to get what they're talking about,
Yeah.
and I still am not entirely sure.
Just step away.
Yeah.
Helicopter view. Fire up the, So here's something I thought was pretty. This is a drowsy thought about paranormal stuff. Mm-hmm. And, I think about stuff before I go to sleep. Okay. And this was one of the ones that sort of popped into my head, right? Because we've kind of talked about it, or I've kind of talked at you about it. Just saying, because sometimes I just talk at you.
And sometimes I just open Kindle.
Yep, and you do that a lot. And I look over and I am telling Omi the secrets of the freaking universe, and she's like, let me read this Kindle app over here. And then later on, I have to say the same thing again, and I'm like, okay, it was all right. So the UAP flap, right? Let's call the whole thing a flap. The whole thing.
It's a big flap.
It's fine. It's a big flap, and it's got lots of moving parts to it, right? So the whole idea about the unidentified aerial phenomenon, right? That's what the government wants everything to be called this unidentified aerial phenomenon, because they don't want to call it unidentified flying object.
Yeah.
So why the diversionary tactic with that? Anyway, who cares? But the idea is that, is this UAP flap causing, UFOs and the belief in aliens as an extraterrestrials is it making it less popular?
I would say instead
And is this basically intention, or is this a fortunate side effect by people that are trying to basically steer us in a different direction when it comes to the UAP thing?
I mean, I think it's still popular, as in there is a recognized interest. However, I'm thinking it is sadly less sexy than other things now.
Well, I think the people, we'll call them the great unwashed.
Okay.
The great unwashed are people that have an idea that they like about UFOs and aliens and everything else. But they're not going to research it, and they certainly are not going to do a podcast about it or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's regular people. Clicking through the TV, they watch the show and they move on, right? And they have their beliefs to it. I think that they've actually separated UFOs and UAPs on purpose.
Good.
Because they know that eventually the technology is going to get caught. And a lot of these, as we've said multiple times over the years, is military or drone technology or whatever. It's terrestrial technology that people are seeing in 80-90% of the cases. So if you're going to get caught and you know it's going to happen sooner or later, why not give it a different moniker? Let's call it unidentified aerial phenomenon versus UFOs and aliens.
And see, I have welcomed that in the sense that, yes, I'm one of those people who think 90% of a phenomenon can be explained away. I'm not going to say 99.9% because I'm not arrogant like that, but I think at least 80 to 90% of a phenomenon, an unexplained phenomenon, or just a phenomenon in general, can be explained with science or better understanding. However, there is always going to be that 10% that is so unique that it remains a part of the phenomenon. So I'm glad there is UAPs versus UFOs. Now, I am disheartened when you talk and you explain and justify UAP towards some of my heartfelt phenomenons like Roswell. I want to believe Roswell or Aurora are a true UFO incident. But yes, you are raining on my parade with logic and some expanded theories that they may not, and they are UAP. While heartbreaking, I do respect that. I want there to be that difference there. And I want there to be true, or not true, but alleged and mystical and unexplained
Yeah, me too.
UFO.
I want there to be an Arctic wall
Yeah.
It surrounds us as we know it. And then once you get over the Arctic wall is everything that you think is out there.
Yeah.
I want on the other side of that wall to be dragons, reptilians, UFOs. I want all that stuff to be on the outside of that wall because that means that it's all true.
Yeah.
And that's, and there's a theory, and I seen this watching a clip, a short, and I'd seen it before, and until just this second, I didn't remember it, but the idea that dragons were real and everywhere, but they're birds, or they were like related to birds, had bird bones.
Yeah.
And so that's, that was the thing, that dragons were real, and, and that's why you don't find remains and everything else. I'm like, I would want that to be true, because that would actually kind of make sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Like with dragons dinosaurs having feathers and all this other weird stuff.
Your theory that this is an intention or a fortunate side effect, I believe it started off as an intention.
I still think it is to a certain degree.
However, the fortunate side effect is that now these, and I hate saying it's a fortunate side effect, these people who have built up so much on expanding and postulating about the UAP versus UFO thing, they've gotten less popular.
Yeah, and which is their intent.
So they have less of a voice, they have less of a platform, less of
I think it's the general audience, the general populace has less of an opinion anymore because...
Or interest,
They just don't care. And when they don't care, the heat dies down.
And the proof of that is the fact that there's been some UFO conferences that I've wanted to go to, some mid-size, not the huge ones like Contact in the Desert and stuff like that, but there's been some mid-size ones that I've wanted to do, and they're not doing them.
Yeah.
Because the people ain't there to pay for the tickets.
Yeah. So they're winning. And, and the idea that somebody, let's just say the government or whatever, could do this, to just create this sort of diversionary or divisive diversionary tactic or whatever, because technology is going to get found out and that people are going to make a lot of money off patents and things like that. And we've sort of seen the chain with that sort of thing, including the new SR-72 Blackbird, which has been... Anyway, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, no. And here's why I think this is a more of a real thing, and just in general. Mm-hmm. It's cheap.
Yeah.
It's dirt cheap. They don't have to spend any money to make this sort of thing happen. And that was the idea between Project Blue Book. Hey, guys, we're going to show a discerned interest in these UFO things, and we're going to research for you because we're the government and want you to have faith in us. Right? And you want all people to get behind you for that kind of thing. Yeah. They're going to take care of us. They're going to protect us. Well, the idea of the government has sort of shifted over time, and now the government is like, we're just going to hang out here in the shadows, right? And we do stuff, but we're not for you or against you. We're not going to get involved like that much anymore. And so let's just go ahead and we'll just do things our own way. Mm-hmm. Like the idea. Anyway, this is one of those things you start talking on. You start coming up with all these different things that can sort of justify your point or take away from it. So this is inexpensive. This is something that can be done through social media. This can be done through, a simple terminology change. Like, hey, what if we shift the interest away and we want to sort of root this in fact to make the whole UFO alien thing, because that's really what we're trying to actually keep people away from.
Is the real UFO?
Is the real UFOs, because I don't think necessarily Roswell was a real UFO thing. I think there have been others.
Yeah.
Like real shit.
Cuba, New Mexico.
Yeah, like real stuff. Because if you really knew that there was a real extraterrestrial, then everything that you know doesn't work anymore. And nobody can control that real narrative anymore because the government and everybody else wants to put a narrative out there or whatever. Like the control is gone. Because if you're like, wait a minute, there is a completely different race, an alien race from another place, then that means that everything is real, right? It could be anything from time travel to space travel to galactic travel. It means that Star Trek is real, Star Wars is real. And we're not even talking about the new telescope that fired up.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's a diversionary tactic, and it was inexpensive, and it was so cheap that they're like, let's just do this.
As a drowsy paranormal stuff thought, this is very valid in the sense that I'm like, wow, this is a bummer for me, because me wanting to research the real UFO stuff, but also take a good look at the UAP stuff. My biggest problem lately is when you say UFO, because I grew up saying UFO. Now when I talk UFO, I'm talking to these people who whose theories are a little farther out there than mine are.
Yeah.
And I have a hard time with that.
Well, those are the CERN is doing it people that you're talking about.
You're like, those are the same people who are like, not only are aliens love and light, but Bigfoot's love and light. And I'm just like,
I don't think so. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, cause
yeah, buddy.
it's like when somebody threw a piece of bread at a bear on the side of the road and he caught it, right? Or the guy who's like, they're driving through Yellowstone or whatever, and they see a bear and they wave at it and it waves back. And they're like, see, animals are nice. Mm-hmm. And for every one of those people that say animals are nice, there's a village in India that's been ripped apart by man-eating lions.
Yeah. Or tigers.
Or tigers, yeah.
in India.
You know, and so, and that's the thing. That's why none of this is ever going to be proven or being able to be completely 100% disproven. There's just too much. They're all little tiny drops in the ocean of all of this stuff. So you can pick a path and go on it, go all in on it. And somebody for sure is going to look at you and go, you are completely crazy about this.
But what I was trying to say is that the verbiage now, you know, the presence of the different verbiage now makes it harder for me, because just that verbiage alone creates these different paths.
Yep.
And I'm definitely not on some of these paths.
Oh, yeah, me either.
I will continue to say UFO, but it
That's
means
just like
what it means in my head.
And I will continue to say that when you have a home security system that's using its own weird compression, right? Because you can't actively say and accurately say that, you know, high definition is high definition, but it's a selling point. And you're making up this weird crap, and you're causing all these motion blurs and things to occur in the camera itself because of the weird stuff you're doing. Mm-hmm. And you're creating all this stuff that, you know, hey, you didn't capture a freaking ghost on your Blink camera or your Ring cam or any of that stuff. Mm-hmm. You're capturing video artifacts from bullshit video compression.
Or maybe because you leave it out there in all elements and all weather, it gets really warm, so a baby lizard wants to nest on it to keep warm.
That too. You know, or maybe your wife is at the Aurora, Texas cemetery where the alien was buried, and you basically catch her as a ghost running over to the thing, you take a picture and running back.
Yeah.
Through the same kind of camera. Yeah. And so, and all this is sort of disheartening, but especially if you really believe in all this stuff, or you really want to believe. So at the end of the day, you kind of have to pick your battles. Which hill are you going to die on for UFOs, right? Like, I mean, okay, so I was the end of the Cold War era.
Yeah.
Navy guy. And there was all sorts of weird crap. And the Cold War, I mean, the Cold War was just that, right? It was a Cold War. Mm-hmm. And people talk about, like, let's use the example of the birds aren't real guy.
Yeah.
Right? He's saying that all birds are basically military drones or government drones, and they've been replaced and all this other stuff, and they could be biometric drones and all this. If you go back to the 60s, the CIA had a fake bird that could fly for 7 months off a tiny little nuclear battery.
Didn't they have a rat, too?
Oh, they had all sorts of crap like that. And that was a surveillance drone, and we actually talked about it in our podcast a couple of years ago. We're like, hold on, the CIA has all sorts of crazy stuff, right?
Yeah.
But, I mean, imagine if you take that technology from the 60s, and let's go ahead and forward it, 60 years later, and you imagine how that technology has gotten better?
Yeah.
Because if you look at stuff in the 60s compared to the stuff now, like there's this little meme that you always see on like Facebook where it shows this guy with the big 70s bad hair, right, and glasses, and he's standing next to a TV, a VCR, an answering machine, a camera. He's got this wide swath of electronic garbage from the 70s behind him. And it says all of this is this. And the other panel is a phone.
Yeah.
So you take all that tonnage of stuff and it just goes to one thing, a phone.
Yeah.
That's how it is, you know. So I don't know. So speaking of heat wave.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I thought about this.
Transition.
Well, it is what it is, man.
Now, we've kind of talked about this
yes.
in various forms, but what's bringing to mind is a very specific location here in North Carolina where it gets very hot and humid and dark near a bridge.
So, you trying to get me to jump in there?
No. Oh. And
I didn't know if I was supposed to be.
We've received stories, especially near the summertime, of reported paranormal activity at this particular location. So all I can do with this article is fully agree, because heat waves, not only do they cause changes in the environment and in the weather, but they also cause changes to people and their perception.
Yes.
Right now, I have a horrible, horrible sinus headache that is changing my voice and changing the way I breathe as we talk. So if I continue on with this heat wave and this high humidity right now, I mean, my eyes are going to cross, I'm going to get tired, I might see a ghost, for all I know.
Yes. So can heat wave increase paranormal activity levels?
Yeah.
So this was an article that was put out by HiggyPop.com, and I guess he's a famous British, whatever. But it was pretty interesting. There were some interesting things in there that got me thinking a little bit. One of them is it kind of goes like this. In 2018, a long-lasting heat wave was experienced across Britain, which seemed to cause a major increase in paranormal activity.
Oh.
And there's paranormal investigator Gary Parsons told the press at the time that since temperatures shot up, he'd experienced a huge increase in calls from the public reporting ghostly goings-on. And there's no real reason that they have for this increase in paranormal activity just in general.
Yeah.
Because he also talked about, like, he's blamed the scorching summer heat wave for an increase in supernatural activity currently. It's like many believe that in order to manifest, ghosts and spirits needs to draw on the energy around them. And could it be that the above-average temperatures and unusually sunny and dry conditions is giving paranormal entities the energy that they need to haunt the living, or give them the type of energy that they need?
Okay, right there. You know what else needs a high level of sunny conditions, sunny, dry conditions, or increased heat? Mirages. And, like, the humidity, or that humidity line you see above a highway, like, that's what needs.
Well, that would be a side effect. That could be a thing.
I mean, which is funny because, like,
Would that affect you?
Yeah, as in the fact I'm seeing a mirage.
Yeah, you're like, whoa.
But that same hazy, weird visual effect you see over, like, blacktop or over a desert that's experiencing an increased heat wave and increased humidity, you're not going to see it someplace else. Even at the same temperature.
Okay, but I think they're really just sort of pointing out that if you look at, like, people that try, or ghost investigators that try to introduce electromagnetism in their investigations, and they'll put, like, an EM pump, which pumps out energy.
Yeah.
And then they say that they get more activity in some cases because there is more energy, right? And if there's more energy for a spirit to use to manifest something.
But see, I would say that EM pump is just replicating an uncomfortable condition.
Well, it depends at what level. See, it's always the dose that makes the poison.
Yeah.
So if it's just enough to give something a little bit of energy, imagine if the entire area had a little bit more increase in energy.
Like,
and so if you're a ghost and you need energy to do something, and now all of a sudden there's a larger, more abundant energy level that you could draw from, it could probably cause more things.
Like, what was it? Last week, we tried to go to a location during high humidity and high temperatures, and you weren't very comfortable there.
No.
I bet if we go right now while it's raining, I mean, you're still going to be a little uncomfortable because it's raining, but you're not going to feel the same.
Maybe. But, I mean, who's to say that I didn't feel that way about that particular place at that time, because it was different. I've been there where it's felt fine, good. That's all right. And I've been there a bunch of times where it's like there's something wrong with this place.
But right now, we don't have that same weather condition.
Yeah, but who's to say the weather is completely the entire factor? They're saying that this is a factor that could cause an increase in paranormal activity, heat, and energy as a whole, because of that heat, and the psychological and physiological effects on humans.
Which is
it
weird,
has on humans.
Because, okay, there's a location in Albuquerque, New Mexico, actually near Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I only felt creeped out there when it got colder, and that would be the Sandia Man Caves. Every time I took the dogs there during the summer, I felt okay, despite running into countless things like rattlesnakes and wildlife that I shouldn't have run into. But I only felt uncomfortable as it got cold, like towards the fall season.
Yeah. Well,
so
I don't know. But you have to also kind of look at it like this. The sun is the biggest electromagnetic pump that we have. The sun puts out a ton of EMF all the time.
And the sun does change position that time of year, right there. It's
well,
more
this
on
is just
that
in general.
location.
I mean,
Yeah,
everybody's experiencing a heat wave. As far as actual cause, I don't know. I don't know what kind of environmental factors are actually causing this heat wave. But anyway, it's more hot. So areas that are having a longer, drier period of high heat, if you think that maybe the sun has something to do with it, because it is, there is more electromagnetic energy from the sun, whether it be through ultraviolet or whatever, is having a more of an effect. Who knows, right? But they also talk about how some paranormal teams note an increase in calls for help during unusually sunny and dry spells. So, who knows? Then they also say it helps them theorize that sunlight gives paranormal entities the energy they need to haunt the living. So, I think this is a nice little article. It goes, and it just happens to notice maybe a little bit of an epidemiological side effect.
Yeah.
That when it's hotter, we get more calls. I mean, you could almost take the same thing instead of saying like paranormal activity and change it to residential heating and cooling activity. And you could say the same thing. I get more calls as a residential heating, ventilation, and air conditioning technician when it's hot in a heat wave than I do when it's not.
And see, that's kind of like...
And that's one of these articles that you read it and you go, huh, all right, well, maybe.
When I read this, I automatically went to the whole, there's more ER visits during a full moon mentality.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of believe that, though, because there are things that definitely act different during a full moon. Yeah. And whether you think that's a cause or not, it's like you can repeat it.
And then this article, it ends with a flourish with the statement that thunderstorms can cause an increase in paranormal activity.
Well, I believe that. You know why?
Why?
More electrical energy, right? More electromagnetic energy. They say that thunderbirds, when you seen a thunderbird, it was on storms.
Yeah.
And they need that energy. I mean, look at Godzilla. It's all about lightning and atomic energy and stuff. But one thing that we didn't talk about that they put in this article, though, is they said that skeptics, well, let's just say that you're the skeptic in this, right? Say that the increase in ghost sightings could also be due to the psychological effect of the heat wave. And so since heat as an irritant and the discomfort it causes, including getting less sleep, can make people less alert and more susceptible to hallucinations. And there are studies that are linking heat-lowered cognitive function and increased heart rate, higher testosterone production, and even a perception of time passing more slowly than normal. So what they're saying is like, man, it's hot. And since it's hot, it's like, boy, it's taking forever. Everything's just irritating. It's so hot.
I kind of alluded to it at the beginning because it's like, you're miserable.
Yes.
You're seeing mirages.
Like, oh, it's so hot, I'm hallucinating.
Yeah.
Possibly. I mean, we're not experiencing rolling blackouts or anything. So yeah, the heat definitely sucks. And I know that this heat has a physical effect, and it certainly can have a psychological effect.
Yeah, but this is like saying during every blizzard you're going to see a Yeti because everything is blurry.
Well, they're just saying that
they
think there's a correlation that a heat wave can cause, basically, or can increase paranormal activity levels.
Okay.
And who's to say that the heat and putting you in that state is not breaking down your psychic defenses and letting all this stuff occur? Can't prove it, can you? That's the problem. Can't prove. So I thought that was pretty funny. Can a heat wave cause paranormal activities? So, I don't know. Sure, why not? So let's talk about the doorway effect, because we're getting to the point where we're going to get ready to wrap up the podcast. Since we don't do commercials. But the doorway effect is something I have totally experienced, and I think the older you get, probably the more
we've actually talked about this.
I know we have. We actually talked about this about 3 years ago. Actually, probably a little bit less. So the doorway effect, do you know what it is?
Yeah, it's where you're looking for something, or you have something on your mind, and the moment you walk through a door, you forget what it was. Like complete blank.
It's like gone right out of your head.
Yeah.
So my unpopular thought with this is not that it's just, some sort of thing, is that that's the simulation resetting itself because you're not ready, or it's not ready.
How about the psychological effect of passing through a portal, i.e. a door? A door is a portal to a different location. Therefore,
it's just another room in the simulation. What if the simulation is not ready? It's, hey.
Okay.
There's some buffering involved, I'm sure. There's a lot of stuff that has to be simulated.
Render.
Yeah, it's like YouTube. You say buffering. That's all YouTube said was buffering. So who's to say that it's not ready for you? And so what it does is it's like, oh, your intent was to go in there and find something, but the simulation hasn't completely generated the full simulation of that particular room. Let's just go ahead and wipe it out of your mind. Then when you do, you turn around and go back to try to figure out. So you turn around and go back to the point where you remembered what you were trying to do in the first place. Like, oh, I need to go find my keys. So what do? You turn around and you go back to the place where you had that last thought. So you retrace your steps. And while you're sitting there trying to figure out what it was, oh, it was my keys, trying to go back and the simulation is done. And there you go. See, that's way more interesting.
Okay.
Of an idea. But I don't really know, what that actually means. With the whole thing. But if you go to wellandgood.com, you can read up on it, where it says the doorway effect is why you forget where you're going when you're entering a different room, and they don't really have a real explanation. They say, since we experience the world as a continuous flow of information, there's this guy, Dr. Radovanowski, he basically says, but we mentally break up the experience into smaller, meaningful events referred to as mental event models. And when we move from one event to another, a mental process called event updating, we remove the information that's relevant from the prior event and start to focus our attention on the new event. And that's why we forget, and that's why we move, and when we switch gears and go into a different thing. So what he's trying to say is that you're not holding all the memories, right? So it's kind of like when we talk about the video compression in these cameras. The camera has a picture that it takes, and when it updates with new information, it doesn't regenerate the entire picture, it just adds on to it. That's really efficient compared to what this guy is saying. This guy is saying that you had a complete mental event in your head, and when you went into the new room, the old mental event gets erased and it creates a new mental event. This is like the difference between like MPEG compression and AVI and stuff. If you want to get, I don't want to go that far, but or MP4 versus whatever. But with like pictures and stuff like that, only the new thing gets created until enough new information happens, and then it has to basically be rebuilt.
Yeah.
And this guy is saying that once you step through, the old information gets erased, and then the new information is what you're working with then. So the old event goes away, the new event occurs, and that you forgot while you were looking or whatever it is you were trying to do when you go through the doorway, because that was part of the old event.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know when he came across this theory, because if it was old, it would make sense. That's back during like MPEG and stuff like that when it comes to photography, when it comes to movies and AVI and junk. If it was a new theory, I'd be like, well, I don't know about that. So, I mean, that would make sense if you want to break it down the nuts and bolts, but I don't know. So the idea that that's what occurs, who knows? But there is something you're allegedly allowed to or supposed to be able to do if you do experience this effect. It says the doorway effect is a normal brain function, right? And it means that our brains are basically passing through the world. It's perfectly normal in an adaptive way. So there's nothing to be alarmed about. The fact that our mind is shifting from one event to the next and forgetting what happened before it is actually helpful, because it helps clean the slate or clear it. And if we're not doing this, we might continue to think about and attend to things that are not really relevant to our current situation. So I guess it keeps us from dwelling on things. But it can be annoying when it happens, and help prevent the doorway effect from happening. One tip that Radovansky suggests is carrying something with you into the other room to help you be reminded of your goal. So, for example, if you're walking into a garage to get a screwdriver, you might carry a screw with you, because you're going to look at the screw and go, why do I have this screw? Well, I need a screwdriver.
Okay.
So if I forgot my keys, what can I carry in there with me to help me look for my keys? Car? I don't know.
I don't know.
So they're basically saying that, hey, that can help sort of remind you what you were looking for, to help sort of curb the doorway effect when it occurs. But there is a simple trick to help jog your memory. One of the best things that you can do is go back to the room where you originally established your goal or learned something, and then sort of repeat the process. Like I've done that.
Yeah. Walk
into a room, forget what I was looking for, and walk back to where I had made the decision to walk into that room, and hope that it jars my memory. You know what that means?
What?
I'm a genius.
Okay.
You just don't even care anymore. I'm talking about simulation theory, all sorts of stuff, and you're over there reading.
Yeah, I'm reading about this this other stuff we are supposed to talk about in the podcast.
What other stuff?
The alleged unearthing of a giant primate skull in the Pacific Northwest.
Oh, you mean the fraud?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, the fraud that took all of what? Not even 4 hours?
Less than that.
Yeah.
It was like maybe 24 hours. No.
Now
maybe 24 hours for the regular people to figure out that it was a complete hoax.
I want to say it took maybe 8 hours for one person we respect, Dr. Jeffrey Meldrum, to form a very good response and reaction.
Yeah.
And then other people as well, like that Dr. Mira, she formed her own response as well. There was some other people out there who were just like,
as soon as I seen it.
let me be, yeah, but since those people are considered renowned in the community.
Oh, I see.
You know, you do have to kind of PR it a little bit.
Well, I mean, anybody
yeah.
looking at that and thinking, okay, if the idea of a giant primate lived in North America, it'd have to be thousands of years old. And I'm like, that skull looks way too good.
Yeah.
And like, why did he find it in a mud puddle? Because I'm like, well, wouldn't the mud? So, I mean, all of this stuff that I've seen from National Geographic and Discovery and everything else, clicked in overdrive, and I'm like, it pegged my BS meter.
I was getting in trouble too because I'm sitting there like, okay, you're in a puddle in the Pacific Northwest, and you have a mohair wrap on, you have your fancy clothes on.
Well, you did create the,
and I was
the
just
meme.
Like, yeah.
You could basically steal his look.
Yeah. And I'm just like, okay, I've been doing a lot of bone collecting and like finding and foraging stuff lately in our yard. And by yard, I mean several acres of wooded area. I am not wearing my Forever 21 summer look or what have you.
Yeah.
I'm wearing stuff that if it gets dirty, I'm not going to be devastated. I'm getting stuff that I'm wearing stuff that won't hold dirt to my body or moisture if I get wet or rained on or things like that. I'm not dragging things out of the forest that look like they just got unwrapped from a box that says shipped by Etsy.
Yeah. Well, here's the problem I have with the whole thing, and it was sort of a different
I literally found a copy of that skull on Etsy.
It was trash. The whole, and it was trash to basically sell goods, right? Which is what this guy was doing. But the idea, though, here was my thought. I'm like, this is bad for paranormal.
Yeah.
And basically cryptid sort of authenticity. I don't think that this guy, I don't even know what his name is, Coyote Jack or whatever he is, right?
Yeah.
I'm never going to watch his stuff because of this.
Yeah.
So I don't think that he takes any of that seriously. I don't think he takes paranormal and Bigfoot stuff seriously. So to him, it wasn't a big deal. It was interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that if he did, he would never do that. You know what I mean? Like, let me give you an example. We went to a meeting with some city folk, some important people that were going to be putting on a UFO festival, and they were yucking it up the whole time, talking about, crazy people coming to see the UFO stuff. And I'm like, that is completely disrespectful to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And it's like, why would you, how could you do that? You want people to show up to your festival. You need to take this more seriously. And they did. They got serious, credible people. I can't say everybody's credible, but they got some credible people to come in.
Sincere people.
Right. And they put more of a sincere look to it and more of a sincere effort. And they had a first-time event that had 1,700 people walking through there.
Yeah.
Through a very small town.
Yeah.
If they were yucking it up and making a joke about the entire thing, they would have 200 people there. Because, if I like that sort of thing and I'm really interested in it, why am I going to go to a place that's making fun of it?
True.
I don't have time for that. You know what I mean? And like this Coyote guy shot himself in the foot because I'll never watch his videos.
Yeah.
I mean, in passing, he had done some stuff that people, tried to give him some sort of credibility, but I would like to think that he just did not know how this would have an impact on people that like this sort of thing. But he never really said Bigfoot. I mean, he said, giant ape, but why would you talk about giant ape unless you're talking about Bigfoot?
Or he was so focused, and this is where I have the problem. He was so focused on the individual impact it may or may not have on himself. He was so focused on, like, okay, no news is the only bad news. So any publicity he gets for himself, the consequences, the broader consequences, weren't an issue for him.
Yeah.
So even if it was obviously he was doing this in jest or being disingenuous, he got his name in the headlines. Granted, he only got his name in his headlines for the blink of an eye.
Yeah, but he also told these crazy lies to try to give him more credibility to his fantastic
which dragged
story.
his name out in the headlines for even longer. But now, because it has so much exposure, the next incident, whether it is true or false, genuine or disgenuine, from anybody, it's going to make them wary. Kind of like in the late 40s, early 50s, people who would call up radio stations to report something strange in the sky. The attitude after so many phone calls was to be dismissive and insulting of those people.
Yeah, so anyway, if you're Coyote Peterson, not Coyote Jack, I apologize, Coyote Peterson, but you're an asshole. That's all I'm going to say. You know, and maybe, and here's something too, maybe it wasn't even his idea, because he has people. He doesn't just do this all by himself, YouTube. Because when you get that many views, and you have subscribers and stuff, you get to the point where you got somebody else filming for you, and you got also, because you can't do it all.
You've got a content manager.
Yeah, you hire somebody to do, because then that's what these big YouTubers do. So if you're ever thinking about YouTube and you're like, well, I'm going to get 5 million subscribers, good luck, because a lot of times you need extra help.
Yeah.
I just think it was, garbage. He's saying stuff like, trying to sneak it through TSA, and I'm going to post these and hopefully get it out there before the government takes them down. And it was garbage. Speaking of garbage.
Oh.
So somebody blew up the Georgia Guidestones, and whether you think they were satanic or Illuminati or whatever, you blew it up.
Yeah.
All right. And I don't even know if they caught the guy, or I'm just going to assume it was a guy. And all this stuff was going on. I mean, it's pretty horrific to blow something up to begin with. I mean, I'm glad nobody was hurt. Because you imagine if you did it at the wrong time, I mean, you could really cause problems. Anyway.
Yeah.
Can you imagine like a piece of cinder block or granite from one of these monuments go?
Because
there's a road right there. It's not that far from the road. So it was a terrible thing. They blew it up, then they wound up taking the rest of it down. The county of Elberton, I think, took the rest of it down because it was unstable. And because the way it was made, those pieces sit on top of each other and helps to give it stability, I guess. So it blew up. And I was like, man, that's pretty crazy. We've been there a couple times because, we said 17 minutes later we were going to talk about it. Here's like 37 minutes. But, and it had the same message on each one of the guide stones and in different languages and stuff like that. It was supposed to be 10 guidelines for humanity.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of people didn't like it. They're like, oh, this is, satanic, or this is whatever. This is nefarious. And it's like, okay, whatever, you're entitled to your opinion. And, it was supposed to be a clock, a compass, all sorts of stuff. And we read all about it. We've been there a couple different times and checked it out. It's been vandalized multiple times in the past and everything else.
There's a gubernatorial candidate who has part of her platform on dismantling it.
Yeah, and from what I heard, she soundly lost in her election campaign, which is good, because if you're that much of an idiot, and she's a Republican, I think she was a Republican, but if you're that much of an idiot, then you don't deserve to serve,
you do not deserve to represent the people.
Yeah, because if you're going to go that far off in left field when you really need some sort of moderate view on things are not going to happen in a way that should be helpful. At least that's the way I kind of look at it. But
yeah.
One of the mysteries, though, with the Georgia Guidestones, and we've actually done a couple podcast episodes on the Guidestones. We've done multiple videos on YouTube and put them up there where we've gone a couple times and sort of documented the difference between 2014 and 2019 and all that crap. So we put that stuff up there. But there was something that I've heard about this and you've heard about this, that there was a possibility of having a time capsule underneath one of the stones.
And here's the thing. I was always under the impression the time capsule was under that flat piece in the video you put on TikTok, where it was like, if you dig up that flat piece that's in the ground that tells you more about the guidestones, there was allegedly a time capsule under there.
Yeah.
Not under the guidestone platform itself, because, well, if you watch documentaries, there's a reason why it wouldn't be on the platform itself.
Or under it.
Yeah, under the platform itself, because it would actually cause problems with the whole monument.
Yeah, those things are heavy. It's compacted earth these things sit on, so if you couldn't really put a time capsule to create a small void, if it would cause problems, like sinking, sagging, and they were put in wrong. They were installed incorrectly, which is a lot of people don't talk about. So that just by it being installed incorrectly, you couldn't really use it as a time as a calendar or all that sort of thing, kind of like homage to Stonehenge. But anyway, yeah, so they said, oh, there's nothing there. And I'm like, did you dig in the right spot? Because it doesn't actually say where they dug specifically in the correct spot, because that flat piece that's on the ground, that was, I thought, the same thing, where they were supposed to have put a time capsule. There's no mention of that. So I know that they took the remainder of the stones down because it was deemed unsafe. Did they leave that flat piece there? I mean, did they remove the stones?
Now, I think this, though, the intention isn't necessarily, there is no, I mean, I want to say this is more of a way to combat the stupid meme that was going around all for the past 5 or 6 days now, which is that it had like Quaaludes. There was a time capsule that had Quaaludes and like old copies of magazines and stuff like that.
And like the 8-track soundtrack to...
Which I ran around Facebook, figuratively, and every time I saw somebody I know, somebody I'm friends with, somebody I've done projects with, somebody I have an association with, posting that stupid repost.
Yeah.
Like, gosh, what was it? Like a bunch of old Playboys and drugs and a picture of like some celebrity or
Saturday
something.
Night Fever soundtrack.
Yeah. I was like, no, that is not true. In fact, the news entity that's mentioned in this post is completely like, they're posting on their own Facebook page. We don't know where somebody came up with this, but we have not reported anything like that.
And the county officials, they squashed the rumors too, Elbert County.
But I want to know where we got that in our head. That
is it Elbert or Elberton?
Elberton. It's Elberton.
Yeah, okay. That's what I thought.
Where did we get that thought, though, that there was a time capsule?
Because they said there was a time capsule. Somebody did one of the movies he actually watched about it. Excuse me. So, I don't know. And it was created by R.C. Christian, who allegedly was a Christian, who put it out there as these guidelines. So, I don't know how satanic it is. And then the idea that, there were sacrifices and stuff. I think 90% of that's all garbage. They put cameras up at one time because people were vandalizing it. So I think it's just became one of those things. And it got me thinking, can you imagine if any time you thought something was crazy, you just destroyed it? We wouldn't have the pyramids, the Sphinx. We wouldn't have anything left.
Which, the two things you just mentioned had to deal with their own periods of people doing that.
Well, they were stealing it and selling it. There's a little bit of a different story.
No, like Napoleon I don't know.
It wasn't Napoleon, but I know.
Somebody blew the nose off him.
For cannon practice or whatever. But even that is supposed to be a myth, because they said that when they looked at it at one time, the nose had been long gone.
But there's like entire, like
upwards of maybe even, I think they said possibly that the nose was gone 1,000 years before the French people ever showed up.
The libraries of Alexandria, those were burned down because somebody didn't like them. Plus, they didn't like the country they were.
Right.
There's countless incidences of one society or one particular culture destroying something significant just because they didn't like it.
Well, be careful. Be careful what you're alluding to.
I know.
Like with everything from the Vatican to changing the Bible, and the popes were, the richest people, and
knocking down stones at
Crusades
Stonehenge.
started because there was a bunch of basically bored knights.
Yeah.
And they were look at the old Knights Templar.
Burial mounds in North America getting destroyed.
Knights Templar became the richest on the planet. They couldn't have that. So who knows? Thought it was wrong. At least I thought it was wrong. I didn't get the whole this is a text print or a blueprint for the end of humanity kind of thing.
I think because the first two rules were kind of bordering on eugenics.
Well, that's what they're saying. Why. But at the same time, if you look at it from a completely scientific standpoint, where it's like, if you had less population on the planet, then everything could thrive in some sort of balance. And it didn't say, hey, we need you to kill everybody but this many people. That's just where people went.
Yeah.
And in the future, it may come down to that. It may come down to where there's a certain balance of a certain number of people versus the resources that are involved. They're already talking about overpopulation now. And I think that's where it's sort of getting kind of convoluted when you've got famous people talking about population control as a whole, right? So, I don't know. But we have a video, a little TikTok and all that stuff where if you wanted to know what the rocks said, the giant granite slabs actually said, you could find it on the internet easily. But we also did a video about it because we were there. But anyway, that's really about it.
Okay.
I think we're about done.
Sure.
I think we have talked a lot.
Well, we do want to thank everybody for tuning in to this week's episode. Now, if you enjoy our banter and you wanted to chip in your 2 cents, go ahead and give that voicemail inbox a call. That's 575-208-4025. Or feel free to reach out to us via email, contact@creepgeeks.com, or start a discussion on social media. We are very active on Facebook groups, Facebook, even Instagram. Like Greg's been saying, check out our TikTok channel. We've been posting a lot of content on there. Thanks again to all our Patreon supporters. You guys help us keep this show running. And tune in soon. Should announce. Next weekend, we're going to be in Gatlinburg for the Smoky Mountain Bigfoot Conference.
Gatlinburg, Tennessee, Smoky Mountain Bigfoot Conference. And surprisingly enough, a lot of famous people seem to be hip to the fact that Smoky Mountain Bigfoot is a big deal.
Yeah. We've been going since the beginning, and we
got
love
all the
that
patches.
event. Yeah.
So it's kind of like, because we brought this up to some of these people, like, you should go here. And they're like, what are you talking about? It seems like the word has gotten out. So anyway, we do really appreciate you listening, and we'll see you next time. So see you later. Take it easy. Bicycle.
Bye.